Hi, welcome to Antimedia. That's Ryan, my nephew.
And that's Joel, my uncle.
He's my, oh, I already said you're my nephew. He's the millennial.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's the boomer.
And today we're going to be talking about a topic that we have done our own research on. And we're going to come here and see if we can come to an agreement, bridging the
hmm
generational divide, grasping
We're trying
hands
to.
across the waters, if you will, uh, making the world a better place. So today
Yeah.
we're going to talk about what is making the crops better. Now, you're in
Mm.
Alberta, I'm in Saskatchewan, both in the
Yep.
heart of farming country, and
Yep.
both seeing all kinds of hard work these days as people are seeding and getting things rolling as fast as we can. So I just want to go over a couple of things. First, not the premise, but the foundational argument. Crop yields in general are and have been going up. So here's a map from, again, most of this data is from our World in Data. FYI, this is from 1850 to 2014. So you can see that over time, crop yields, it doesn't matter what country, this is all Europe in this case, they're
Yep.
experiencing the same thing. Crop yields going up, 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 and up. And then here is crop yields in the world, different crops. So cocoa, beans, cocoa has not been going up, by the way, just so you know. It's the one here.
No.
Soybeans, barley, wheat, rice, maize, cassava, and what's with the potatoes and bananas? I I, I was
I'm not
always
sure.
told that bananas was like a crop that was dying. Remember? I mean, that was always a thing. But
That's a whole other video that we can do on bananas
that's
because
probably
it's an
not a bad
incredibly
idea.
interesting topic.
But yeah, we've been long told that they're disappearing. But okay, all right now. So here's
Well,
cereal. Yeah,
depends on the brand. Yeah.
yeah,
Or not the brand, depends
the
on the
the
breed of
the
banana.
clone. All right. So
All right.
here is from 1961 to 2018. So I'm going to slide our menu back here to 1962. So here's crop cereal yield. So this is all the different sort of wheat, barley, oats, those kinds of crops. And you can see over time, everywhere, everybody's just getting higher and higher and higher yields. And even
hmm
places like China are seeing incredible differences over time. So the idea
Yeah.
that crops yield is going up is, of course, pretty straightforward. Here's cocoa. I just wanted to show you cocoa. Cocoa just really hasn't gone up much. So there's the only one that is. All right. Oh, dang, I shouldn't have said that. All right. So here's our guesses.
Yeah.
What is causing the crop yields going up? I guess there's probably three options, which I've already hinted at one. So option number one, fertilizers are being used more and more and more.
Yeah.
Option
Well,
number,
more and better.
okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Option number two, there's more land being used to make more crops, more farmers, more land, right? Well,
Possibly.
that
Yeah.
would bring up the amount. And then option number three is maybe something along the lines of technology or mechanization that perhaps is solving the problem.
Yeah.
And my guess, by the way, is on none of those. So I'm not sure
Oh,
what you're
we,
leaning at.
let's can we throw CO2 in there?
You're a jerk.
Sorry. We'll save that for later.
Can't I stump you ever? All right, here we go. Here's fertilizer. All right, fertilizer production. It has gone up in Asia, but like North America, it's actually gone down. Europe is
We're
yellow, also
using
has gone
less. Yeah.
down. Asia, and that's mostly because they're catching up in certain areas. But for the most part, like the big production, North America, Europe, and I would imagine this would also include like Russia, because most of Russia's growing area is technically in Europe. It's on this side of the
Yeah, it's
Volga,
closer. It's
right?
closer to the
Yeah.
it's closer to the Ukraine.
So, okay. So let's head over to arable land needed to produce fixed quantity of crops. All right, this goes up to 2014. So here we see that the world numbers necessary to actually produce the food that we need has been going down steadily since 1961.
Yep.
They need less land to grow more crop. Oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
Here is the change in cereal production, yield, and land use. So this is a combination of both. So land use used in cereal cropping has, as you can see down this very bottom number, is just floating around there, not going up, not going down. Has peaked. Oh boy, I don't know if it peaked, but 1980 would have been the same as today. World population. This is not actually a curve of the world population, but they're using that as the median here. But the yield has gone up and the production has gone up. So
Yeah.
combination of both. So yield is how much food you get out of an acre or a hectare.
Yep.
And then, of course, production is just how much there is total.
It is total.
And
Yeah.
production, oddly enough, outpaces yield. And we don't see a dramatic overuse of land in this entire thing as well. Okay. Here we go again. Fertilizer. I just want to get back to the fertilizer question real quick. Fertilizer application. So this is all time again from 1880. Mostly, actually, this is part of some Western countries for the most part, and Japan thrown in. Spain, United States, Denmark. This is kind of a little bit fuzzy, but you can see they started using fertilizer, but over the last, let's go to the last couple decades, from 1990, you can see fertilizer application has been dropping.
Yeah. Yeah, so I wonder how much the fertilizer part, not to hopefully not jump the shark here a little bit on you, but on the fertilizer side, two main things that they've been doing is they've been getting a lot smarter at what they plant, where and when,
and how often.
Right?
Yep.
I got a couple, I wouldn't say like close friends who are farmers, but I got family members that are kind of in the business. They have hobby farms and whatnot, and I know a couple high school buddies who are hardcore farmers, and they don't necessarily change up a lot what they do every year, but they've been rotating a lot more than they used to.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And
a lot more diversity in the crops around here.
Yeah.
And that might go to, well, one of the reasons we didn't bring up is possibly genetic modification.
Oh.
Right. That's one that we didn't bring up that I just thought of right now.
And we probably should, because that is definitely a factor. I think it is a factor.
I would think so, right? They've managed to shorten, even with breeding, like we're not talking like super hardcore anything crazy about changing the genome, but they were able to change the crop cycle on wheat.
Yep.
Right. Then you get all that short wheat out there.
That's right. You also have
half as high.
You also have some wheat that's resistant to drought now, which for some areas has been a problem, and some areas is not.
Yep.
And that's so genetic modification for sure is also a possibility. I agree 100%. Now, let me just throw this out real quick. This is a scatter graph. They're never fun, scatter graphs, but this is crop yield versus fertilizer use. And again, as I drag it back in time, there's not a significant, this goes only back to 2002 though. So there's not a significant trend of it, increasing or decreasing. It's just there. So fertilizer is being used. It's being used effectively, but the dramatic increases that we saw, from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s is gone. They're doing it maintenance as far as yields go. All right. Okay. Here is land use spared by yield grains in hectares and land under cereal production. So land under cereal production has been the same, but they have managed to actually spare using land that they don't want to. It's bizarre. So land spared by yield grain. So what's happening is because we're doing so good in harvesting with our current land use, we haven't had to increase our acres or hectares of farmland to compensate. So now and if you look now, we've actually had production been the same as it was back in 1962. Hey, almost the year I was born. They would have had to increase the land use for farming more than double what we have now. Look at that.
Yeah.
So this is a very significant thing that's happening. The land use is way, way better.
Can you see a graph called cropland extent over the long run?
Sure. I can just punch it in.
If you can punch that one in. I just found it. On there.
You sent me the link.
Yeah. No, you got it there. I think you got it.
All right. Again,
hit the all charts on land use. Hit the I think you have to hit that button there.
All right.
And so it's not that one. Cropland extent over the long run. Does it have that one? Yeah. Right. Oh, I'm going to point at my screen.
There you go.
Super helpful to you.
There it is. There it is.
So this is super cool. So it looks like Europe, excluding Russia, cropland has been going down, not up, since the 1960s.
Even Russia's going down. Not recently.
Yeah, Russia's going down. The United States has shrunk a little bit, right? Canada doesn't necessarily look like it shrunk, but
okay,
it's been about the same. It's hard to see because it moves.
It's the width of it as it goes that you're watching. Okay, so let's go back to Russia. So yeah, it's leveled out though.
China,
So
China,
they've been increasing, and
India,
yeah.
but they're not
What's the
like they're
yellow
not
one?
massive increase.
That's Latin America's yellow.
The only one that's
Brazil,
gotten much bigger is Brazil,
Africa
Africa,
in general. Yeah,
and maybe Oceania a little bit.
not
Not
really.
that they have that many.
Yeah.
Not that they have many hectares in Oceania. So anyway, that's super interesting that the Western countries we've been dropping acreage, and so I've heard that we've been reforesting.
Oh, well, and yeah, we have been reforesting, and of course, everybody's always picking on Brazil, but they've increased it a little bit, but compared to to Russia and Canada, United States, so
Yeah.
they've been increasing. Africa has definitely been increasing their land use, which I mean, Africa's got an amazing farmland, so that's and maybe
Yeah.
underutilized. I think fair would be fair to say, but that's my
Yeah.
guess. All right, good
Most
nap.
likely.
All right, let me just throw in poverty real quick. One of the things that has been doing very well over time is we've been decreasing poverty around the world. More people are getting food. More people have been
Yes.
getting out of food. Now they say food insecurity, and I'm not a big fan of that phrase. Anyways, so
Yeah.
around the world, everywhere has been dropping. There's been every once in a while there's a dip up, is that a dip up, increase up.
Yep.
But the trend is around the world is definitely down. This is 2017. I will say this. Oh, by the way, also here's malnourishment in general, undernourishment in developing countries. So this is now just the poor countries, or have been doing better across the board,
Yeah.
and it's been dropping, and until this, until COVID hit, until the lockdowns hit, and here's the World Bank. Okay, so if there's any website that I would definitely be very scared of, it's the World Bank. And they just say, you know what? We expect it to have an incredible increase due to lockdowns. Well, they'll blame it on the pandemic, but it's been lockdowns that have done that. And so, for the first year in years, in decades, we're going to see an increase in poverty and malnourishment, unfortunately, across the board. All right, one
Yep.
last fertilizer one. I don't know why this is over here, but here it is. Fertilizer use per hectare. So again, recently I'm sliding back in time. Not a big difference. You go back to 2002. This is only back to 2002. Marginal increase. It doesn't sort of show itself being anything significant. All right. Okay. If it's technology, then that would probably not include the tractors and combines. All the tractors and combines really do, honestly, is make it so you need less people to take it and take it off.
Yes. Yeah. It's just way less labor intensive.
Correct.
I don't say that to a farmer, but I know where they all go in the middle of winter, and it's usually somewhere warm.
Yes, the reality is in the old days we had in Saskatchewan we had farms basically every mile with people on them that every harvest had to get out there by hand. 100 years ago by hand, threshing machines were invented. Eventually, combines. By the way, combines combined the threshing and the harvesting. So that's the two things they do. They combine those jobs. That's why they're called combines. In case you didn't know that. I ask farmers that question all the time, and they have no idea what it combined. So it's a fun trick.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I remember our trip when we took a little bit of a back tour to go to Swift Current, and the only houses we saw for miles and miles and miles were abandoned ones. But there was crops everywhere.
Yes, you took a wrong turn at Albuquerque. Yes, I remember that trip.
It was Empress, by Empress.
Good old Empress, where your grandmother was a nurse. Yeah, how's that for trivia? So, yes, they're getting the seed into the ground in a hurry helps. When you have the right window of opportunity. So we can probably account for a little bit of an increase to mechanization, but essentially mechanization just removes the need for manual labor. Horsepower, in this case, combines are taking away manpower and doing it a very good job. As well as, again, if you have 200 people in a field doing the work of one combine, you're still going to get the crop off at the same speed. You just need more people to do it. Yeah. So that, like I said, I'll give that a little bit of a credence, but not much, because it's just a matter of not having enough manpower. All right, so let's get to CO2. I'm going to show you a clip. This is William Happer. He's the Professor Emeritus of the Cyrus Fugg Professor Emeritus at the Department of Physics at Princeton University. Whew, he's 90-something. This guy's an old guy. And he was doing this presentation just a couple days ago about the importance of CO2 for crops. So I'm just going to play this about 4-minute clip.
So this is a picture of our best estimates of past levels of CO2. So the vertical scale, R CO2, is the amount of that CO2 in the past was greater than it is today. And so you can see on that scale that over most of the past, CO2 levels have been 5 times, 10 times, even 20 times greater than today. And during this entire period,
I don't get any of the audio.
This is the so-called Phanerozoic, you know, since the Cambrian era, when we have good fossil records. So we know pretty well what life was doing during that time from the sediments. And all of this period with much higher CO2 levels, you know, life flourished on Earth, and in general, it flourished better when there was more CO2. So plants really would prefer to have 2, 3, 4 times more CO2 than we have today. And
Yep.
you can see plants already responding to that. Let me show you an example. This is the greening of the Earth measured from satellites. So this picture shows areas of the Earth that are getting greener over the 20-year period, I think. My eyes aren't good enough to read it, but it's roughly 20 years. And what you notice is that everywhere, the Sahel, you can see just south of the Sahara, it's greening dramatically. The western United States is greening. Western Australia is greening. Western India is greening. And this is almost certainly due to CO2. And the reason this happens is that CO2 allows plants to grow where today, or where 50 years ago it was too dry. So plants are now needing less water to grow than they did 50 or 100 years before. Let me show you another example of what more CO2 does in terms of making plants grow better. This is a picture of Dr. Sherwood Idsa, and it was actually an experiment done here in Phoenix back in the 80s. And so this is a pine tree that I think it's a Mediterranean pine, Eldarica pine. And on the left is a pine tree growing in the current CO2 levels at that time, which was about ambient was 380, I believe it says. And on the right are more and more CO2. So you can see that the pine trees, the more CO2 you put in them, the faster they grow. And you can do this with almost any plant. You know, corn is wheat, cotton, they all grow better with more CO2. So this is the so-called pollutant that you hear about with the climate emergency. So let me explain the basics of why that works. If you look closely at a plant, take a low power magnifying glass, you'll see the leaf is full of little holes. And the little holes are to let carbon dioxide diffuse in from the air into the moist interior of the leaf, where the leaf with a special enzyme called rubisco, one of the most ancient enzymes in the world and the most abundant protein in the world, combines the CO2 with water to make sugar. And the energy to run this little factory, this chemical factory within the leaf, is provided by sunlight. So now the problem with this is if you see this hole, not only is CO2 diffusing in, but there's a lot more water vapor inside the leaf than there is CO2 in the air outside. So for every CO2 molecule that diffuses into the leaf, there are 100 water molecules that diffuse out. So the plant has this dilemma, engineering dilemma. It has to have holes in its leaf to get the CO2 that it needs to live. But those same holes desiccate it, they dry it out, and it, of course, needs water to live too. So what is happening all over the world now is plants grow, they're not stupid, they grow leaves with fewer holes in them, and so there's more CO2 in the air outside, so they don't need as many hulls, but they don't leak as much water either. So that's why you're seeing the greening of the earth. It's from the plants themselves taking advantage of CO2 coming back to more historically normal levels.
Okay, so plants aren't stupid. Did you catch that?
Yeah, they're smart.
They're very smart. Okay, so the bottom line for William Happer, and of course for many people, is, and of course we're seeing this in general, is that more CO2 makes more efficient plants. And one of the most important things that they are efficient with is not needing as much water. So all of a sudden, he's right. We're seeing the greening. Now, let me put up what NASA wrote about this. So here's this wonderful article from NASA. I'm not going to show you the headline yet. They go through and they say studies are showing this is working, that plants are doing way better, that they're needing less water. It just goes on and on and on. And it says these wonderful things. Findings cast light on agriculture global, highlight the importance of studying these systems. Water is essential, they said, building on the research of these stakeholders. Anyway, so they go through this article saying how it is working. In fact, more CO2 does work. Here's the headline. Rising carbon dioxide levels
and
will
help
help
and
hurt crops. And when you read the article, you can't find any hurting. So it's
any of the hurting part. Yeah.
now this was actually written already in 2016. But the funny thing is they just decided, well, we have to. So the only thing they hinted at was, of course, the idea that maybe there's more storms and stuff. But we aren't seeing any of that. And if there are any times where there's less water, the extra CO2 will help. So, anyways, I do agree. Here's a quick look at the global CO2 levels from Noaa. This is the National Oceanography something Association. Oh, I can never say that right. I can't remember. So in Hawaii, they monitor CO2 levels. They put it in the middle of Hawaii because it's least impacted by cities and things nearby.
Yeah.
And as you can see, this is the chart on the left is 2016 to current, very current as of today. And the level just keeps increasing. If you go back to the right side, 1960 to current, it's just been going up at its normal rate. Quick question. We had a global pandemic a year ago. All the airlines and all the transportation around the world, okay, not all, but a lot of it stopped. Where on this chart do you see the CO2 being impacted by us stopping driving our trucks and airplanes?
Oh, weird. No.
Yeah, it's not there.
No, I was just looking at the world latest daily CO2 levels.
Yeah.
And last year at this time, it was 418 parts per million. And today it's 420.
Yep. And that's right there. So oddly enough, our little pandemic didn't help us with CO2. But the CO2 rise is obviously, well, I think it's obvious that it's natural regardless of what we do. And the second thing is that CO2 is helping to feed the world potentially. So my best guess is yes, technology is playing a role. Fertilizer, not so much anymore, but they're using it more wisely. Technology is going to be helping a little bit, but ultimately crops are benefiting from having a little bit more of the CO2 necessary to grow faster and grow better. And going back to that little video where he shows the tree, of course he has to identify the exact tree, the difference that tree made in just adding CO2 to the greenhouse is astounding. And growing bigger and is almost always means growing better as far as crops go. Very seldom do you hear a farmer say, yeah, my crop's growing too fast.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one.
It's just not a thing. So, you go ahead. Last word to you.
No, I think it's a combination of all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Better technology. They do a better job of,
rotating crops is a big deal.
They're rotating, and their practices, and even with the fertilizer, they are way more likely now to be very specific on the fertilizer they need. They do soil testing, all that stuff.
Yeah, they also don't summer fallow everything and then have the land blow into the wind as often they do.
Yes. We're better with the water.
Farming,
we're better with the wind. All that stuff. Absolutely.
Okay.
And yields are way up, and we can feed more people than exist on this planet.
Get a load of this. We could actually feed almost twice as many. In Saskatchewan alone, we could fill up, I did the calculation one day, we could fill up the Toronto Sky Dome, whatever it's called now, Rogers Center. We could fill up the Rogers Center somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 times with the grain that we produce.
Yeah.
That's the bin.
Yeah. It's a lot of grain.
And that's just
It's a lot of grain.
So Saskatchewan does 4 times what Alberta does, 2 times what Manitoba does 1 time, just for our Canadian friends to know the ratio. Saskatchewan is the bomb. So there we have it.
Awesome.
Don't know if we solved any problems.
No, but at least we know why things are the way they are.
And again, we didn't disagree. We got to come up with something we disagree on one of these days, because
yeah, I know.
The butter is the best so far we've disagreed on. But we can do what we can. Anyway, so that's it. So
Awesome.
20 minutes. Dang it. 25 minutes. We're getting longer. We got to get shorter. All right. So in order to get shorter, let's stop. So see you later. Don't blow up the world, people.